Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to look at a single joke that had two, wildly different effects. For a team of scientists, it was an inside gag, something that brought them together. But for the head scientists, when that same joke hit the news, it turned into an absolute nightmare. How is that possible? How can the exact same words be a bridge in one moment and a weapon in the next? Well, by the time we're done here, you're going to have a whole new way of looking at pretty much every joke you hear.
So meet Sophie. She's a biologist, and she's been doing this incredible research on how wasps use pheromones. After years of hard work, she publishes her paper, and a news outlet decides to pick up the story. Awesome, right? Well, instead of focusing on the science, they run with these headlines about lusty little buzzers, and, yep, they basically call her life's work wasp porn.
And this is where it gets really interesting. See, inside her lab, wasp porn had actually become a running joke between her and her colleagues. It was funny, but seeing it splashed across the news? Whoa, a totally different story. She was horrified, offended, and honestly afraid it could tank her career. The words were identical. So what on earth changed?
So yeah, that's our central puzzle. Let's break down this curious case of a joke that was, somehow, both harmless fun and a professional disaster. So what's going on here? How can humor build people up 1 second and then just completely tear them down the next? To figure this out, we've got to look for some clues.
All right, our first clue is all about tackling this idea that most of us have about humor. We have to kind of dismantle this myth that humor is always, well, nice.
There's this researcher, Michael Billig, who calls it the ideology of niceness. It's this basic assumption that jokes are just fun, a way to lighten the mood. But this view totally ignores the fact that humor has a dark side. It's a tool, and it can be used for discipline, for rebellion, and, for exclusion. When we just write it off as harmless, we miss how a simple joke can feel like an attack on someone's entire identity. And Billig just nails it with this quote. One person's harmless bit of teasing will be another's cruelty. That really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The meaning of a joke isn't just in the words themselves. It's in how it lands, how it's experienced.
Okay, clue number 2. This one's really cool. It helps us actually map out the social forces at play here. We need to look at what's called the geometry of a joke. Turns out every joke creates this little triangle of relationships.
So let's look at what happened with the news story. We'll call this the geometry of ridicule. You've got the reporter at the top telling a joke about the research, that's the object at the bottom, to the public, the audience. By dumbing it down and making it sensational, the reporter is basically winking at the reader, aligning with them against the scientist. Sophie gets pushed completely outside of this triangle. She's not in on the joke, she is the joke.
Now let's flip it. Let's look at the lab. This is the geometry of rapport. Sophie and her colleagues are aligned with each other. They're on the same team. And the object of their joke? It isn't just the research, it's the pain of the research, the shared struggle, the day-to-day grind. They're united against the work. Everyone is on the inside.
So, here's the kicker. The words of the joke didn't change one bit, but the social relationships they created, they were polar opposites. Humor is fundamentally about alignment. It's about who you're siding with and, just as important, who's being left out in the cold.
And that brings us to our third, and maybe our most important clue. It all comes down to a question of entitlement. See, not everyone has the right to make the same joke.
Let's put a name to it, joking rights. Think of it like an unspoken license. And it's a license you have to earn. You don't just get it automatically. It's negotiated, right there in the moment. And it's based on things like your personal experience with the topic, your authority, and whether you're really part of the in-group. This illustrates it perfectly. It's like having a security badge, right? Sophie and her team are insiders. They've put in the blood, sweat, and tears. They have first-hand access, and that gives them the right to make fun of their own struggle. The reporters, they're outsiders. Their access is second-hand. So when they try to use the same joke, it's like their badge gets declined, access denied. The researcher who did this analysis, Peter Kramer, says it perfectly. Joking rights must be negotiated. In other words, it's not about your job title or who you are on paper. It's about the relationship you've built in that specific interaction.
Okay, we've got our clues. The myth of nice humor, the geometry of a joke, and this idea of joking rights. Now let's put it all together and finally solve the mystery.
This table just lays it all out, side by side. It's so clear when you see it like this. In the news story, you've got a public audience of strangers. That feels threatening. The joke is a violation by an outsider. The result? Ridicule. Now look at the lab. The audience is private, your peers.
That feels safe. The joke is a playful bond between insiders. The result? Rapport. Same words, completely different social recipe.
So there you have it. The mystery is solved. A joke's meaning is never set in stone. It's built, right there in the moment, by a mix of three things: who's listening, what social lines are being drawn, and whether the person telling the joke has actually earned the right to tell it.
So, why does a story about Wasp research matter to the rest of us? Because it shines a huge spotlight on a problem that anyone trying to communicate complex stuff faces. It's this constant tightrope walk between trying to be engaging and relatable and trying to hold on to your authority as an expert.
So what's the big lesson here? First, you've got to spot the trap. Trying to humanize a topic with a joke can totally backfire and make the expert look foolish. The fix requires a real mental shift. We have to stop asking the simple question, is this joke funny, and start asking a much more powerful question. What social team-up is this joke creating? Is it bringing the audience closer to the expert, or is it setting them up against them?
So how can you use this, in your own life? It really boils down to a few things. Remember that every single joke draws a line, creating an us and a them. Understand that the right to joke is earned. It's not a given. And most importantly, context isn't just a little bit important, it is everything. Before you speak, just think, who's in the room?
So I'll leave you with this. The next time you tell a joke, or even just laugh at one, take half a second and ask yourself that geometric question. Who am I teaming up with right now? And who am I leaving out? The answer might tell you a lot.